You have to build champions. You have to get us on board. You have to paint us pretty pictures to get us on board sometimes. Forget about insight. Forget about foresight. Just to be able to answer a simple question, they have to out there fight in the wilderness for their lives. I will tell you that it's not about technology, it's about psychology. Regardless what industry you are in, you are working with human beings, and humans are very resistant to change. You don't want to fight for your life, you want to innovate.
Nuestra primera invitada arranca con todo, con muchísima fuerza. Nuestras intervenciones, el keynote, desbloqueando el valor estratégico o creando resultados de negocio en estrategia de datos, está a cargo de Aliona Richardson. Ella es Senior Value Engineer con experiencia en muchas industrias. Aliona comenzó su carrera en Boeing como líder de estrategia y operaciones. Luego se trasladó a Cisco y ha pasado los últimos 2 años con Snowflake. Su experiencia incluye FinOps, evaluaciones de valor y estudios de performance. Le apasiona simplificar la ingeniería de valor y desbloquear el potencial, alineando la visión ejecutiva con el valor empresarial para impulsar resultados que transformen a profundidad.
Okay. So we're going to do that in a few different ways. We're going to talk about why a value-oriented approach, why does it matter? We're going to talk about how do we map technical use cases and capabilities to business outcomes. We're going to talk about your role, the role of the Chief Data Officer in value enablement and realization. And then we're going to look at some case studies and customer examples, and then wrap up with some Q&A. So I've been in a few different industries, but my formal value engineering role started when I came to Boeing as a strategy and operations leader. And I was supporting the office of the CIO. And I was tasked with getting our executive leadership team to focus from cost and tasks on business outcomes and value. Our new CEO was super focused on that. And she don't tell me how much it costs. Don't give me all of these tasks. Tell me, why are we doing it? What are we trying to impact? And what we noticed very quickly is that it was very difficult for us to change our mindset and start thinking that way. It's very easy to see the tip of the iceberg and focused on costs, but it takes a lot more deeper dive to understand what's below the iceberg. What are other areas that you're impacting, and how do we quantify that value? So from Boeing, I went to Cisco, and now I've been with Snowflake for almost 2 years. Some of the areas of my expertise are FinOps analysis, or like cloud cost optimization and management, and then partnering with our customers to help them do just that, the visualize of the technical capabilities and outcomes, and mapping them to business value and helping tell that story. So that's a little bit about me. Now let's jump in. Why a value-oriented approach? I think the best way to do that is to show you what does it look like for your teams when there is no centralized data strategy, when there is no CDO. What do they go through to get a little nugget of information? Let's take a look.
Come on, Thug. Way to go! Take it to the cave! Release the baby!
Get, Sandy, go!
All right, does that look familiar? Does it look like your Monday morning maybe? But that's what it looks like when there is no centralized data strategy. Your teams are out there fighting for their lives for any little nugget of information. Forget about insight, forget about foresight. Just to be able to answer a simple question, they have to out there fight in the wilderness for their lives. But what would be the value of building a well-organized and stocked pantry? And that is what you do, right? So you have, what is the value of, instead of fighting in the wilderness, to be able to walk into a well-organized pantry with shelves with the right level of access, with the data quality, food that is not going to poison you, and just cook, right? What value and innovation and time to market that you are able to unlock. And again, you want to make sure that it's well stocked. Do you have enough data to answer business questions? Do you have enough agility to be able to not only answer routine requests, but also adjust to new requests that are coming in? And let's face it, the state of the market, the dynamic changes that are happening every day, you have more and more of those ad hoc requests. And are you positioned to be able to handle them quickly? Do you have up-to-date data? Is there a lag in your data refresh? Are you providing accurate information, or is it old news and it's no longer accurate? And do you have enough data, right? You have this gold mine. Is it accessible? Is it organized in a way that you can actually find it when you need it? And the users that need to be able to gain some insight and foresights know where it is and how to use it. Do you facilitate effective planning and forecasting? And does your infrastructure, the old lady that was down, is it strong enough to support the scale and growth of all the new workloads that you are taking on? That's why we're here. That is what you do. You're the magicians behind the curtain that create and organize that pantry so your teams can come and become Michelin chefs and create beautiful things for your organizations. So let's talk about how do we start? How would we start mapping these technical capabilities, this magic behind the curtain, to business outcomes? So at the business level, the business is driving the vision, goals, strategic objectives, and all of those map to business outcomes and value drivers. From the technical perspective, you have the data platform, you have all the bells and whistles and tools and processes that support technical use cases and associated KPIs that enable those business outcomes and value drivers. The idea is to start marrying the two so you can start telling the story. Right? All of these technical capabilities that we are enabling, what are they going to be driving? Are we going to be driving revenue growth or protection? Are we driving cost savings or avoidance? Are we driving risk mitigation? Right? So you have the business drivers, you have the data sources, and you are needing to create that bridge. Because all too often, organizations just want to focus on cost cutting. Direct costs are very easy to identify. That is a very easy tip of the iceberg thing to identify. What you want to start driving the culture of is, what is the value of greater analytical awareness and business agility? If we stitch this customer journey together and create a 360 view of the customer, how does it impact our sales growth? How does it impact our customer success organization in helping us proactively identify customers that are going to churn so we can start sending them personalized messages and activities so we can retain those customers? What about cross-sell and upsell opportunities with our products and services? All of that is enabled by your data strategy outside of the costs, right? What about mitigating risk, right? Creating quality data that's secure, that's governed, so people are not working off of the side of their desks in Excel spreadsheets, right? This is one of your most secure assets. So it's reducing compliance and regulatory costs, is being able to proactively identify fraud and reduce costs associated with that. All of that is part of value that needs to be told in the stories in addition to the technical capabilities that you are sharing. So one effective, how do you go about building this? One effective way is a value map. A lot of times our chief data officers and technical teams focus on the technical capabilities only, and the executive team just gets lost in those details. So in building a value map, number one, you want to identify organizational priorities, objectives, and goals. So you want to get with the leadership team, understand what those objectives are. And you can do that at a high level, organizational level. You can do that per business unit. You can do it for a program or an initiative, right? You can deconstruct it as much as you want to. You're probably going to want to start broad and then narrow down the scope as you go. Then you want to map those priorities and objectives to challenges. What are the gaps? What is preventing us from achieving what we want to achieve? And you do that through discovery sessions, through workshops. You want to get the leadership perspective, but you also want to understand through upstream and downstream, like from requirements ingestion to those that consume your requirements. What are the pain points? Where are the struggles? And then you want to map that to technical use cases and capabilities. How are we going to solve those problems? Is it, through data warehouse, machine learning models, ETL tools? What are those things going to be that will help solve our data silos and lack of usability of our data? And then once you've done that, you want to map that to business outcomes. What KPIs are we going to be driving? Are we going to be making money? Are we going to be saving money? Are we reducing risk? Are we infusing operational efficiencies into our teams? In essence, when usually I talk about data operations productivity, sometimes people say, I don't want to quantify that value because my CEO is going to make me fire all these people. The way to do that is I am unlocking additional capacity. My backlog is only getting bigger. So instead of hiring new people to be able to get through that backlog and deliver at the speed of the needs, at the speed of business's need, I am providing additional hours for my team to take on that work without having to hire more people, right? But it's changing that mindset. I will tell you that it's not about technology, it's about psychology. Regardless what industry you are in, you are working with human beings, and humans are very resistant to change. You have to build champions, you have to get us on board, you have to paint us pretty pictures to get us on board sometimes. And this value map does that. This is an example of one, and this is more at an organizational level. So again, you can break it down by rows. This is meant to be a living and breathing document. As you continue to build a foundation and mature, from general statements, they can become more specific. So for example, one of the priorities is innovative, productive product development. The current challenges in achieving that objective is fragmented data sources and slow time to insight. The technical capabilities and use cases we are going to implement to overcome these challenges is building a unified data platform that integrates all data sources into a single source of truth, enabling data accessibility and analysis, and then we're also going to enable real-time analytics. And as you progress from those general statements, it may say things take 2 months to be able to provide one report. And then once you implement, that's a thing you can track to say now it takes a day, right? So from 2 months to a day, that tells a very powerful story. And then you can look at customer enhancements, supply chain efficiencies, and then you map all of that to business impacts of value. So increasing market share, reducing customer churn. At the beginning, you may not be even tracking some of these metrics, but it creates a gap and lets you know we need to start, right? Let's see where we are today. What is our current churn rate? And then let's set a timeline for ourselves. Once we implement and operationalize this use case, how has churn impacted? The point is you're going to have 99 problems, but you don't want data to be one. That's the idea. And then on the cost savings and avoidance side, so reduce legacy infrastructure and maintenance costs. That's those direct costs. What's in scope to be replaced? What are you paying for it today? The new solution you're implementing, what's the associated cost? You compare the two and you see the savings. That is very easy to do. That's the tip of the iceberg. But then below that, your data operations productivity, your ETL developers, data engineers, data scientists, data analysts. What does it mean to infuse that additional capacity to avoid your teams fighting in the wilderness for their life, one little poisoned egg, versus being able to walk into a well-organized pantry and just cook, right? There's value associated with that. And then risk mitigation. People sleep on that one, but you see with the data security, right? Like we are all online, it becomes super important. A data breach can be costly. Regulatory and compliance costs can be costly. If you are enabling technical capabilities that reduce those risks, you want to be able to capture that value and articulate it. So let's talk about your role in all of this, right? So as chief data officers, you are responsible for driving strategic leadership and vision, influence and advocacy, and removing barriers to success. So in terms of strategic leadership and vision, you set the vision. I can tell you that I've done hundreds of customer engagements. It becomes infinitely more difficult to be able to articulate priorities, challenges, capabilities, and outcomes and map them to value drivers when there is no centralized data strategy. Because there's these fiefdoms. There's marketing, human resources, sales, and everybody wants to hold on to their data. And what a chief data officer does, it says, we are one voice, one sound. This is what we are trying to accomplish. This is why we want to accomplish it. You don't want to fight for your life. You want to innovate. You don't want to focus on, you don't want to spend a month being able to answer what's our customer lifetime value and get 10 different answers depending on what department you reach out to. You want to trust your data. You want to be able to answer that information quickly, and you want to be able to action on that gold mine that you have. You set that vision. You collaborate with the leadership team, communicate that vision, build champions, get their buy-in, and create a culture. Again, it's a culture shift. You got to change people's hearts and minds to get them away from status quo. I like being in the wilderness. It treats me nice. The air is fresh. Right? Yeah, but this is better. Like last time you lost 3 people because they ate poisoned mushrooms. Like, let's not do that anymore, right? And then from strategic leadership and vision, we talk about influence and advocacy. I think the biggest thing that I can tell you here is build those champions. When you have, it's easier to show people sometimes than it is to tell them. That's why, number one, those value maps are important. You want to paint the picture. You want to bring them along on the journey. But find friendlies. Start with their organization and then bring their stories to the rest of the team. So we had an engagement at a bank. Their credit card portfolio team were the first kind of volunteers at Tributes to be on the new data platform. And we were able to capture all of the value realized from that engagement. And one of the examples is that they were able to identify 370 different accounts and $8 million with open to buy of credit card fraud that they stopped before the cards were ever sent. So the CDO went and took that story to the bank operations team, which have been notoriously difficult and not really interested in collaborating, and showed them that. And they just went through an experience where a fraudster called in 10 different times and racked up $250,000 worth of fraudulent charges, which have left. Now they have to go through like recuperation processes. And that was a very powerful story and context that resonated with them. Like, yes, I want some of that value. I want some of that collaboration enabled. I want to be able to proactively stop that from happening. So you drive that mindset to start documenting those examples and taking that show on the road to share it with others. And then removing barriers to success. So again, it's creating, I think the main point here is data quality. You will have to slow down to be able to go fast. You have to get people to trust the quality of the data. People are tired of running different reports, and for one question, I get 10 different answers. They don't want to bug you and yell at you and all the teams that support them, like, why is this different, right? So it's important to start creating those bridges between the different departments, aligning on definitions, aligning on data quality, and ensuring that that exists, because then once you get the trust, you will have thousands of champions. It grows exponentially from there. It's, again, gathering those success stories, focusing on low-hanging fruit, telling those stories, continue to document that and share across the organization. Let's look at some case studies and customer examples. Now, these are going to be a little bit busy slides, but I wanted to show you these as part of kind of the brainstorming that you might be doing when you first start out, right? As you start building that muscle. So, for example, for AdTech and agency. So again, should look familiar. You have revenue growth and protection, cost savings and avoidance or operational excellence, and then risk mitigation. So you will start lining out the business drivers and enterprise objectives that you might want to influence or that are top of mind and important. So for example, improve quality of identity graphs. Then you will identify various business capabilities and outcomes that you want to infuse into the organization. So for example, deeper understanding of audience segments and better leverage of first-party brand data to drive campaign effectiveness. And then there's going to be like hundreds of KPIs. You're going to list them, and then you're going to identify which are the ones that we want to track. You may not be tracking them yet. That's okay. So you want to identify them first, and then as you continue to mature and build your foundation, maybe build dashboards. So in a dashboard, you can play back to your executive team, this is where we started, this is where we are. So looking at like return on ad spend or click-through rate or cost per 1,000 impressions and things like that. Another industry example is CPG. So let's look at an example from operational excellence. So we'll look at improved procurement and manufacturing, and we want to reduce production issues, create seamless inventory management, eliminate unnecessary human intervention, admin, and maintenance. Notice I'm not talking about how fast the queries are. I'm not talking about any nuts and bolts. This is all business problems that we are going to impact. And then we identify the KPIs that we are going to track our success rate by. So it could be supplier performance, it could be percent of overdue invoices, percent of disputed invoices, ratio time spent with customers. Then you pick which one you want to track. You find out where you are today. You may still be fighting for your life until you build that foundation, but at least have a logical explanation to how you got to the number that you got to, so then you can show the progression as you start to improve. Another example is manufacturing. Okay, so here let's look at risk mitigation, and we'll look at quality control optimization. So I want to improve supplier quality management, vendor collaborative analysis, and incentive management, and maintenance optimization. So some of the metrics you may look at is percent of scrap and rework, defects shipped and ordered, compliance fines, returns on quality, warranty costs, right? All of those are different KPIs that you could be tracking. So I know it's a lot of information, but again, at this stage, you're still brainstorming, so you can get the muscle going on what are the priorities, what are the capabilities, what are the associated KPIs that we are going to impact with the technical solution. Here's another example of transportation and logistics customer. Now, this chief data officer reached out to us because they have had real difficult time communicating to the executive team what it is that they do and the value that they provide. And I said, okay, well, send me what you've been showing them. And I am not a technical person, so I very quickly got very lost in what they were sending because it was all very, very technical focused. So we went and we interviewed their teams. We did some discovery workshop and helped put together this around this specific use case. So it's a customer preferred carrier cost. This customer is a broker. And they realized that the quotes that they were providing were above market price. And so their margins were struggling. So they created this solution with internal data sources, external data sources, looking at geographical data, and integrating all of this with alerts that were being manifested in the command center for their carrier reps. So with business logic, the system would evaluate by geographical position, equipment, times. If the quote was indeed above market, it would send them the alert, and then they would have 14 days to action on that alert, to reach out to the customer, renegotiate, and then within that 14 days, all of that information would feed back to a dashboard that the leadership team would have access to. And they were able to real-time track the cost savings that they started to realize just from that engagement. They did not add any administrative work to their sales team. As a matter of fact, they took it off the table because it was coming to where they were already doing work,
de las
right?
ventas.
And they just had to action on the alert.
Porque simplemente tenían que trabajar cuando tenían esta alerta. Utilizaban el equipo encargado de los datos. Entonces, en primer lugar, hubo un 57% de incremento en los ingresos brutos. Hubo ahorro de costos
Which equal to
que pudo ser proyectado a más de $3 millones y les tomó más de 3 años para ahorrar estos costos. ¿Creen que valió la pena? ¿Creen que si les hubieran pedido $150,000, se les hubieran dado? No, pero esto cambió la historia completamente. Así que este es un caso de uso más general y pueden comenzar a hacer estas mediciones rápidamente, de manera sencilla. ¿Cómo es el trabajo que ustedes están llevando a cabo en el proceso completo? Están compartiendo la información interna y externa, están teniendo en cuenta la adquisición y la preparación de la data, están brindando los productos de manera más rápida. Hablamos de la productividad al usar los datos, hablamos de las actividades en las que el equipo invierte tiempo para poder obtener los resultados que tienen, que son modelamiento, reporte, análisis, adquisición, etc. Aquí hay otro ejemplo. Las poblaciones o las personas esperan un servicio más personalizado actualmente, entonces tienen que repensar cómo utilizar la información y la tecnología para tener experiencias diferenciadas. De otra manera, no se tienen los insights de los clientes porque hay experiencias muy distintas, hay fragmentación de datos. No podemos ver cuál es el proceso de compra del cliente. También estamos implementando plataformas que son escalables y que pueden estar a la medida de un incremento de carga. Estamos tratando de mejorar la seguridad. Entonces, al hacer esto, el valor de realización nos muestra una conversión de clientes al duplicado, incremento en el marketing, etc. Así que para resumir, quieren asegurarse entonces de que las iniciativas estén relacionadas con los objetivos y prioridades de la organización. Tienen que ver cuáles son sus prioridades, cuáles son los retos para llevar a cabo estas prioridades. Y después, ¿cuál es el valor asociado a esto? ¿Cuál es el impacto del negocio y cómo podemos cuantificarlo? Primero, entonces, de repente vamos a tener porcentajes, no vamos a contarlo en dólares, pero vamos a identificar los indicadores y comenzar a monitorear los cambios. Entonces, cuando alguien nos pregunta, ¿por qué estamos invirtiendo en esto? Le vamos a decir, ok, es por esto. Estas son todas las cosas que hemos alcanzado. Queremos tener una cultura basada en información o en datos. Algunos clientes lo que hacen es implementar unas competencias. Por ejemplo, decimos, ok, estoy cómoda aquí, sé que tienes ese tablero, pero no lo quiero usar. Vamos a utilizar entonces esta competencia. Dime cuál es el valor que tiene tu cliente. Tienes esta hoja de cálculo y tienes este tablero. ¿Quién tiene la información más rápido? Y haciendo estas cosas alrededor del mes, cosas que las personas pueden utilizar, van a observar cuánto más rápido, cuánto más precisa es la información. Y de esa manera pueden observar cuáles son los beneficios de cambiar nuestra manera de hacer las cosas. Entonces, tenemos el mapa de valor. Hay que comenzar a documentar las cosas específicas que necesitamos. A medida que avanzas con tus talleres, de repente hay algo que nos toma 2 meses. Ahora nos toma solo un día. Antes nos tomaba 3 personas por una semana para crear un informe. Ahora es automático. Entonces, queremos ver esos contrastes para ver dónde estábamos antes y dónde estamos ahora. Y obviamente vamos a continuar a agregar cosas y agregando mejoras a medida que avanzamos. Eso es todo lo que tengo para compartir. No sé si tienen alguna pregunta. Hola, muchas gracias por la presentación, fue brillante. Soy Ricardo de Napos, de México. Una pregunta que tengo es, al hacer este análisis, ¿hay un punto de certidumbre o incertidumbre relacionado a la inteligencia artificial? Entonces, ¿cómo hacemos con estos procesos clave que puede que funcionen o no funcionen como esperamos? ¿Y cómo manejamos este riesgo al proyectar, por ejemplo, si tenemos una reducción de tiempo? Hay algunos procesos de inteligencia artificial que vamos a utilizar. ¿Cómo reducimos esta incertidumbre para que podamos saber el valor? De repente, no sé, en un día, de repente una semana, pero ¿cómo hacemos? Déjame asegurarme de que entendí la pregunta. Entonces, cuando estás realizando el análisis y estás haciendo una proyección de lo que anticipas como impacto, ¿cómo, en primer lugar, cómo anticipamos el impacto? Y en segundo lugar, ¿cómo sabemos cuánto nos va a tomar en términos de operación? Creo que me preocupa más el proceso de crear ese valor. Puede haber alguna ciencia de datos que podría funcionar o no. Vamos a tener un porcentaje con alta confianza, de repente 80% de producción, con mucho de 90%, si alcanzamos una eficiencia. Bueno, hay diferentes escenarios. ¿Cómo manejamos eso? Me imagino algunos, pero me gustaría que me los menciones. Bueno, diría esto. Como ingeniera de valor en una empresa, yo estoy trabajando contigo en el valor que estamos produciendo. Por ejemplo, ahorita la plataforma de Snowflake. Aquí estamos realizando una serie de estudios de realización de valor con benchmarking para ver cómo impactan las diferentes áreas. Entonces, al hacer este análisis, tenemos un rango y el cliente puede observar diferentes estudios donde las personas han alcanzado estos impactos o estos números. Esa es una de las maneras. Pero como dices, puede tomar tiempo para operacionalizar esto, pues de que no sea solo un día. Entonces, creamos rampas de realización de valor. Puede ser conservador, probable y optimista. Conservador puede ser 10% del valor. 2, 50%, 3, 90%, probablemente en probabilidad 75%, 3, 100% y optimista 90 a 100. Entonces, se supone que es un ejercicio colaborativo y nos muestra que mientras más rápido avancemos, más rápido vemos un cambio. Así podemos discutir los valores. Por ejemplo, conservador, 10%. No es un ejercicio en cascada. Mientras más aprendemos, más podemos actualizar lo que sabemos. Entonces, a medida que podamos apoyar esa lógica sobre cómo estamos proyectando el impacto, podemos ajustarnos a la nueva información que hemos aprendido. Creemos que va a haber más o creemos que va a haber menos. Este es un bloqueo que hemos experimentado. ¿Eso te ayuda? Sí, claro. Hola, mi nombre es Denise, soy de aquí de Perú. Tengo una pregunta porque me gustaría que me recomiendes, por ejemplo, si estamos en un negocio, los datos, tenemos una guía, no somos como un socio, soy el negocio, yo te digo qué es lo que tienes que hacer. Así que, como mencionaron, la data brinda valor. Y he visto que hay múltiples retos sobre, por ejemplo, cómo venderse a sí mismos. Estoy hablando de los equipos que trabajan con estos datos. Sí, claro que sí. La gran pregunta es esa. Tenemos que hablar su lenguaje. Y solamente podemos hablar su lengua si es que hablas con ellos, si es que ves su contexto, si es que entiendes qué es lo que están tratando de hacer. Yo he estado trabajando en tecnología de la información por más de un año, por más de 10 años, y a veces nos olvidamos de por qué existimos. Y existimos para ayudar al negocio. A veces vienen, nos gritan, nos dicen por qué sucede esto, pero estamos ahí para eso, estamos ahí para brindar soporte. para que todo sea más rápido, para que sea más fácil. Entonces, en primer lugar, comiencen a hablar con un enfoque positivo. Díganles por qué están hablando con ellos. Esto es lo que estamos tratando de entender. Esto es lo que estamos tratando de lograr. Estamos viendo que ustedes están tratando de lograr esto. Hay algunos escenarios donde la gente estaba preguntando de algo por mucho tiempo y dicen, no quiero hablar sobre esto. Si es que lo vas a entregar el día de mañana, pues hablemos. Si no, no, gracias. Tenemos que ver cuál es la visión. Tenemos que ver tenemos que mostrar por qué es necesario acceder a esta información. Quiero que su equipo pueda responder esas preguntas. Entiendo que estás tratando de hacer que se encuentren la X, la Y y la Z, pero ¿cómo podemos hacer para enfocarnos en la innovación, para poder ser más rápidos en el mercado? Entonces, hay que tener estos talleres de descubrimiento. No es tener una conversación técnica, sino qué es lo que estás tratando de lograr, dónde estás teniendo problemas y cuál es el impacto. ¿Y ahora qué? Esa es mi pregunta. No hablo sobre cosas sin sentido, sino dime qué es lo que no estás logrando, qué quieres hacer y cuál es el impacto. El hecho de que te haya tomado 2 meses tener este informe, ¿cuál es la consecuencia de esto? Bueno, tuve un nuevo manager que no tenía experiencia y tomó la decisión de contratar a más personas y nos costó cierta cantidad de dinero. Tenemos que ver la importancia de saber por qué es importante responder esas preguntas más rápido. Muy buena pregunta. Ok, parece que desbloquear el valor de estrategia ha sido muy interesante. Muchas gracias por explicarnos esto y mantenerlo sencillo.